Cowboy Buster's in the house, and he says Keaton Chaplin made art film. Now is ideology. Yeah,
Many are a little bit too many. Certainly, the big high-profile ones are ideology,
you know,
and they're all the worse for it.
the sad part is, Cowboy, we as the fans see a lot of this film as more art than they do, especially the corporate studios section of it all.
Yep.
And that's the sad truth of it all, especially when we get into like restoration and preservation and all that kind of stuff we've talked about in the past several times over. And I'm sure will become a bigger issue into the future going forward. They really don't give a shit about that. So that's where we're going to have to make a difference, I think. But no, I think that's the biggest problem right there is some of the creatives. And for every few Tarantinos and Scorseses and whatnot, they're a dying breed. We're getting more Michael Bay, J.J. Abrams types every day, more so than we are.
Well, that's the ones that the gatekeepers or the keymasters like those types more than the aforementioned ones, because those ones toe the line that they're preaching. Whereas I guarantee you, there's probably 1,000 filmmakers that are as good as if not better than the aforementioned now that are being shuttered by the larger studios because they don't meet the other qualifications of what it is there, and they're working on the independent side of things with really small budgets and very limited distribution. So who knows what will happen the next few years, but I'm pretty sure 2024 is the year where we'll see a dramatic change in what is being greenlit and what is being debuted in theaters.
Yeah, because I mean, I'd even make the argument that somebody like Tarantino couldn't be discovered now, at least not the way he was then. The fact that the internet, it's both a blessing and a curse, because Tarantino probably would have just made something like Reservoir Dogs with his phone, and just doing that and putting it up on like YouTube or something like that would have, nobody would have noticed, at least not from Hollywood.
No, that's true. Like there are so many artists, both in terms of film, but especially in terms of music, that came in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s.
Oh, the music industry's dead, dude.
And ever since then, your only hope is basically to become a YouTuber and hope that you can spin that off into a career, because all of the venues that an artist used to have to make it big, they're closed now.
Yeah, Justin Bieber got his start on YouTube.
Yep, exactly. Didn't Taylor Swift and well, technically, what's her face from Black Widow, Florence Pugh, that's how she got discovered, was singing YouTube videos and shit like that.
Yeah.
Like
all of these traditional venues for being huge pop stars and stuff like that, they're rapidly closing.
Yeah. They're saying in the chat we missed a super chat from Mech1170 or was it Mech1164?
Well, let's see if we have we have it here. If not, I'm
sorry if we did. It may have been one before I got in here. I know we were scrambling this morning. That was my fault too.
Well, I'll check behind the scenes, sir. Which was
because I can only go so far back. Yeah, Mech1164.
Yeah. Well, I'm just gonna go into the repository behind the
scenes. Sir. Yeah, because Mikey was trying to fill in for this morning, so I don't know when he jumped in here. And I can only go so far back, so...
No, this is recent. We had this marked. What happened with it?
Dr. Longdonger says you had it on screen and then skipped it. So I guess you were about to read it, but you forgot.
This is why we miss 6. She always... she catches me when I do this shit.
I thought it was familiar. No, basically what he said.
Sorry about
1164 said for $5... Remember how they tried to go after all of you being the fandom menace. That's what they want a target to go after. That's exactly right. That's why we can't make a company, because a company for everyone, that's going to get shut down. Yep. They can't shut down a million voices. They can't shut them down when they're together. And the closest thing they had to a company was this long discarded, outdated fandom menace larger umbrella, which is something that that most have gone away from for a number of different reasons, and but that's what people are trying to latch onto. Like, oh, their fandom man is cancelled, but you can't cancel it because it's just a hashtag. It's just something you can call yourself. Don't really mean anything. You're still a number of independent voices, independent from each other. Take down one, that one is probably going to come back, and 3 more is going to take its place. That's the beauty with being unaffiliated.
And did I not read Camelbot Killer's actual message?
Was that the blue super chat?
It was, yeah, it was one, because I said remind me just before we get to the very end.
Yeah, you didn't read it. You talked about him and
oh, God
how
darn it.
cool he was.
What did he
but you didn't read
say?
it.
I'm trying to find it now. God darn it. This is what happens when we get to the crunch time. I start to do stupid shit like this. I apologize. This is why I miss 6 so much.
Yeah, what Camelot Killer said was, or asked,
Yes.
was to write, film, and release a film
Yes.
in theater. What's the cheapest alternative?
There you go. Well, that actually kind of, and I think that's what he was commenting on. We already kind of semi-answered that. Unfortunately, right now, the cheapest alternative, really, it's easier to probably get your movie in a theater now than it ever was before due to the digital age. But as far as getting notice, that's the bigger problem.
Well, you
right,
can always
Script?
4-wall, but it's expensive.
Exactly. Like that's the thing.
And
is
you won't be able
promotion
to
is
do that at
expensive,
AMC.
yeah.
You won't be able to do that at AMC or any of the bigger chains. You have to go to the mom and pop independent theaters, like, or the boutique theaters or the repertory theaters. The cheapest I've ever seen it in the United States was $1,200 for one night.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, like just to write, direct, and again, I have to stress this: you need an editor, or you need to be an editor, because so many people will be excited to work on your film at the start, but it's a very long and difficult process to complete, and so many will end up dropping out towards the end. So you need people that are going to be there to the very end, or else you are not making a movie. That's just the matter that the name of the game. I mean, I'm all for, grab your iPhone, go out, shoot something. But if you want to make it look good, if you want to make it as professional as you possibly can on your micro budget, you have to make sure that the people that you are working with stay there to the end. And guess what? Even in Hollywood, a lot of them jump ship if there's a better deal around the corner, or they just lose interest. It's the nature of the game. So if you're going to do it yourself, you better be the writer, the director, and the editor, the sound mixer, the colorist, all of those things, because you're going to be the only one that will see it to the end.
And as far as the actual cost, it all depends on what you want to shoot, my friend. You can shoot something like Clerks, and do it probably a hell of a lot cheaper now than what Kevin Smith did it for then. You could probably do something with some effects and maybe some other, production costs that depends on what you're building, like sets and whatnot. But your main cost right away, I can think what you're talking about is you're going to want, as far as you're going to have to either write it yourself or hire somebody to write it. Script, how much does it cost to hire you for a service?
It depends on what it is you want, but I'm like, for a consulting stuff,
kind of
I'm pretty
estimate.
cheap. If you want to hire me to write you a screenplay based off of your own stuff, I'm kind of expensive.
Okay, well, let's just say a ballpark. Let's just to give him a ballpark.
If you hire me to write a script for them, you're looking between 25-30 grand US.
Okay, so right there you got 25-30 grand. Yeah. As far as film, it depends on what you want to use. If you're going to do digitally, probably 5-10 grand would buy you all the equipment you need easy. If not, that'd be plenty more. 5 would be more than enough, I bet. But if you want a really good camera that looks really good, you're probably going to want to spend around 10. Otherwise, you're going to have to rent the equipment, which that'll save you some money. But right there's another whatever. And then as far as editing, well, the beauty of that is editing is all done on computers now. As long as you do it digital, everything's done digitally. It only costs you probably, you could do that for a couple $100 or cheaper, as long as you already have the computer. Otherwise, you got to buy the computer plus the software, and you're good to go. And then, like Script said, you could 4-wall a theater, but then you'd have to promote it. Advertising all costs money. I mean, at the end of the day, as far as like doing a full-fledged movie and doing what you're kind of talking about here, I'd imagine anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 at least to get started. And that could probably cover most of your expenses by the end of the day. But that's being very, very lenient. And the beauty of it is digital has cleaned up the bigger cost factor. Because if you were doing it in film, camera,
development costs,
all that shit is so expensive. But one thing you are forgetting here is sound. You're going to want some decent sound guys too, and sound equipment.
Yep, that's the other part too. That can also be like that can be pricey, but you can
But
actually find a lot of people within the union that'll work
yeah,
on non-union jobs.
yeah. I was going to say your best bet is to find somebody who actually knows what they're doing with sound, because I'll tell you right now, you can have something that looks miraculous on screen, but if it sounds like fucking shot, like it's shot on a camcorder, it's going to look like it's shot on a camcorder. The sound is more important than you think. Yep, YetiCast knows exactly what I'm talking about. Sound is key. Yes, it's very, very important. It is the biggest difference between making something feel like $1 million production and a $20 million production. Sound is very important. The score is also very important too. Like, you can get away with doing something very simple, but make it fitting, make it sound like $1 million. And nowadays, that's the beauty. Like Script was talking to, is like sound equipment, especially in the digital age, has become a lot cheaper. So,
oh yeah, you can get a really good digital recorder that
yep,
has multiple channels, multiple level
yep,
controls for under $200. Just get a
absolutely.
shotgun mic, hook it up to that,
Yep.
and as long as you've got a slate to sync up your sound and audio,
Don't be
you're
afraid to record multiple things too.
yeah. Well, room tone, you have
Lapel
to do about
and
60
everything.
seconds of
Well,
room
that
tone
too, but I
per
mean,
day.
like, also have like lapel mics and have various mics for backup just in case, because you never know
Not
what mics sound
necessarily,
better.
because some of those lavalier mics can have distortions that your boom mic can pick up. So you have to make sure everything is in proper sync,
That too,
but
yeah,
also expect that you're going to be doing more ADR than you ever
that's true.
prepared for.
But to that note, Script, that's why it's important to have somebody. You might as well just find somebody who knows sound instead of trying to play that guessing game.
Go to the IATSE website. You can
Yeah,
find
exactly.
people who are sound operators and whatnot. They'll give you some rates.
And then
But
the
this is all
actual,
just on the independent side of
yeah,
things. If
that's all the
you want to hire
independent
me
side of
for a
things.
studio, you're looking at
Yeah, well,
six
that
figures for my
he adds to that. He goes, well, what about why in the world does it cost so much? Because they're unions and there's all kinds of other costs involved. We're talking independent, exactly like Script just said.
I can give another example also, because when the movies that cost 200 million, those are like the A-list productions and typically sequels, where everyone involved have contracts which assumes that the previous movie was a massive hit. Otherwise, this one wouldn't be made. So a pay rise is in order. So then the stars are going to get tens of millions. The director's going to get tens of millions. The producer's going to get at least a couple of million. Like, for instance, we did the numbers on this Star Trek 4 that never ended up getting made. One of the reasons why Paramount went back to Chris Pine and Chris Hemsworth and asked them to cut the contract was because if they didn't, that movie, before there was a script, before anything was cast, before they had put two twigs together, that movie was going to cost like almost 100 million in cast salaries alone.
Well, an example of one that actually happened is Infinity War, right? Like almost like half the budget is just paying the actors.
Yeah. So like, for instance, a movie that costs 200 million, how much of those 200 million actually go into the technical aspects of making the movie if you take the cast and all those salaries out of it, and you only pay the salaries of every on the ground of the technical personnel? That 200 million movie becomes a $40 million movie really freaking
Maybe
quickly.
60 or 80 at most.
Yeah.
Depending on the extent of the production.
Yeah.
But yes, as 70s also points out, this is very true. We're not going to get into the specifics, but yeah.
I argue that Bad Robot and Secret Hideout have made it an art form at this point. It's the only creative thing they've got.
Pretty much. If you want to look at it that way, that is true.